All right, cool.
We'll give another 5 just to give him a chance since it's the first meeting. So how is everybody liking the class so far?
I haven't done too much to really even know, honestly.
Good.
So it looks like, Derek, you're recording. So do you want to submit the recording for us then?
Yeah, I can do that. There's a certain method they want us to use for that. Because I know I'll be able to save the recording like to my computer and then upload it that way. I don't know if they prefer it to be directly from Zoom. I've had trouble with that. Okay.
Whatever way worked for you in the past, go ahead and use that way.
Okay. I also did upload it to YouTube once, and that worked pretty well because YouTube's reliable at least.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then I'll find the way that makes it easiest and do it that way. That'll work.
Gregory, you had the template open.
Yes.
Oh, you're the best.
Would you be willing to type that out and submit that for us? Both things are submitted.
I do need just a part of the template has the link. So if you're recording it, Derek, if you could send the link, just share it to our email. If you get a link.
Okay. All right, yeah, and then I'll okay, so it just needs to be a link that's on the template then?
Yeah, so as far as my submission, I only need to have a link to it. Because there's another submission where you need to submit it on like a discussion board or something. So if you want to post that, then I'll take care of the template.
Okay. I see the template. The document will have a link to the Zoom meeting, among other things. All right. Yeah. We'll do that then.
As far as what we need to do today is we need to do that template, and then we need to, there's a submission as well for the day and time of our group meeting that I guess we need to submit.
Yeah.
As well. So are we just going to?
Everybody has to submit the day and time.
Yes.
So what day does Thursday in the morning work for everybody? So we have plenty of time to get the work done, or do we want to do it on a Wednesday?
It's fine for me.
I can do either one.
Okay. Just to double check, it has me put everyone's names on here. The names that are showing up on Zoom, are those good for you guys? Are those first and last names all correct on there?
Yeah.
We're just missing Johnson.
Right. Well, it's just having me list those who participated. So if he's not here, I guess. Our template, it has us come up with an example as part of that, but our question had us come up with examples for like 4 different things. Did we want to do one question that kind of had multiple different types of law in it, like, or did we want to do different examples of those?
We could, I think our question should probably have at least 2 to 3 different types of law and expressing the differences and then explaining that this represents in our answer. I thought that would work, but I'm not sure.
So if we take, for example, like a situation where we do kind of to incorporate all of them, I guess, like constitutional, federal law category.
Can you turn your volume up just a little bit?
On mine?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. But so we can break it down between like law, statute, and regulation, kind of include those all in like one example.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, should we go ahead and just get started then?
I think we should. So have we decided what day we want to do this? Do we want to do this on Wednesdays, or do we want to continue to do this on Thursday mornings?
Does anyone have any objections to just continuing to do it on Thursdays?
No, it works for me either way.
All right, let's
Okay.
just do
Yeah,
Thursday.
either one works. Okay.
Thursday, 6th?
And it does say that just one person needs to submit that. So who wants to submit that?
I can submit that.
Okay.
And if you want, we can still do this. I can set up the meetings and different people can record and do it. Because my computer doesn't always allow me to, let me record. It just has a funny way of when I try to upload it and whatnot. I've had issues. But I can set up the meeting in the morning.
Okay.
That will work.
That'll be important for me. I can't take charge on that one. It's early.
It is early.
So
Okay.
I'll put I think the meeting ID should be the same each time, but I will always put the meeting ID in an email.
Okay.
So with that being said, Derek, you're already recording then?
Yeah, we've been recording.
Awesome. So as far as a discussion of our topic and everything like that, there's so many different things I feel like I have open right now. But is there kind of a guideline for, oh, here it is. Okay, so first talk about the questions you have about the course and use a study guide to study this week's topics. So now I guess we should open up the study guide. So the Unit 1 exam study guide, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing in this class apparently.
That makes two of us.
Okay, so basically what I looked at and what I studied for today was figuring out the difference between federal law, statute, regulation, and case law. That is what I looked at yesterday to prepare for this today.
Yeah,
That's what I did.
What we all looked over.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So initial thoughts, I guess we just go over them one by one and kind of define each one. There's 4 of us and 4 of those. I guess I'll start with federal law. From what I understood, federal law is it's just kind of a general organization. It's a lot more sweeping. It includes the Constitution and amendments, articles like that. So it includes statutes, regulations, and case law as well, but it's more overarching that it's kind of an umbrella for all of them.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
Who wants to take a statute then? Talking about that.
I can do statute.
Okay.
I understood statute to be, it's just a law that's passed by Congress type thing. So yeah, it's a federal law passed by Congress, but that's called a statute once it's codified or something like that.
Also been done by the state legislation.
Right. Congress
That's, I
and
think,
state
what
legislation.
we typically think of when you say like there is a law. I think statute is typically what we like imagine a law to be.
Mhm.
So that was kind of interesting when I was reading it. I was like a little confused at first, but
Yeah.
okay. So who wants to do regulation then?
So regulation was that it seemed to me that regulation was something that was what's the word I'm looking for? Like performed by the executive branch in order to say enforce a statute or something like that. So like what I was I spent the most time trying to research regulation because it seemed the most confusing to me, and it kept bringing me back to like regulatory agencies. It's like if you look at regulation, it's like these only exist with like the IRS or something, you know. And so it's more of like the enforceable arm of the statute. Like it can be put into place by Congress through a statute, but then there are regulations that are enforced by regulatory agencies. Does that sound correct? Because I was kind of confused on this one.
Yeah, no, it sounds
Yeah,
like pretty much what I saw.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it.
Cool.
Derek, were you able to come up with like a specific example of that?
So the example I ended up coming back to for almost all of them was the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, because there was a statute that was passed, but then there were regulations that had to be enforced by the IRS and the Department of Labor, in which, so the fact that if you didn't have insurance, you'd have to pay during tax season. You have to pay an extra fine during tax season. That was not, I guess, wasn't a fine; it was a tax. Thanks, Supreme Court. And so there's the case law also included in the ACA, was that it was defined as a tax, and so that case set it out to be that it was a tax that had to be paid with if you didn't have insurance, which sounds more like a punishment than a revenue source to me. Anyways, we don't need to get into that, but that's where I ended up.
So it comes down to you use essentially the statute was the ACA, the regulation was the tax itself, the case law was defining that as a tax rather than a fine.
right. Case law, the case law are decisions of the courts together with their rationale. The whole law is declared by the courts through cases decided before them. A case law actually defines, case law would be Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
That's a precedent. Case law creates precedents for handling it when it comes before the courts again.
Okay.
I honestly thought this one was the most confusing because there's no actual like law, like a different judge could rule differently on that. And you could bring this case and be like, hey, like in this case, this happened and they decided on it this way, but a different judge could take that and be like, yeah, but I'm going to decide that a different way. At least that's how I understood it. Is that Is that
Yeah.
accurate or?
Yeah,
Yeah, they can interpret it different ways.
they can interpret differently, but certain things with case law depends on what precedent they use for the case as to what will happen.
Right. So in the example of Roe v. Wade, that was taken before the Supreme Court, and so the only way to make a different decision, a judge has to follow that decision unless it comes again before the Supreme Court again. Then the Supreme Court could overturn that decision, but it has to be the Supreme Court because they're the highest court.
The highest court.
Okay.
Okay. So as far
Sorry to
as
see this. Sorry.
oh, snap, Derek knows Latin, guys. So I guess as far as where we're at now, the example as far as how he comes up with the template, what we need to do first is create a situation or an example, and then create a quiz question revolving around that example. Now, the easiest way that it seems for me to do this would be in like a matching sense where we lay out the situation like the Affordable Care Act, for example, and then you match which part of that is a federal law, statute, or regulation, or case law. The only thing I'm seeing is that the template is organized as a multiple choice question. So should we stick to the template and just do it that way for now, or do you guys think it would be okay to try it as a matching option?
I think we stick with the template because that's what he wants. It would be a multiple choice, and it could be easily done as a multiple choice. You just simply have to do something along the lines of a statement answer.
Oh, okay.
So we would kind of line it up in the same way where we break down the different parts of the act, but then each answer just kind of matches them differently.
Right.
One correct answer. Okay. So with that being said, I mean, do we want to go ahead and use the Affordable Care Act, or would you guys prefer to come up with another example as a group?
Affordable Care Act would work.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like the best.
Do we want all of the cases in the book that I was reading? When I was trying to figure out kind of what was going on, they always reference like very specific like codes and things like that to reference laws and statutes. Do we want to look up like a code or anything for it, or do you think the Affordable Care Act is sufficient to explain kind of the statute that was passed through the Affordable Care Act?
I'll start looking that up.
So as far as our example goes then, just starting, the Affordable Care Act was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Obama, right? I feel like so ignorant in this course, honestly. When was that signed into 2010? And Affordable Care Act. Derek, you said that as far as regulation for that, it came down to the IRS, correct?
Yeah, it was the IRS, the Department of Labor, because it included in the law regulation that employers could not retaliate against an employee who reported an employer that was not following the guidelines of the ACA. And then there was one other that I had looked up last night. And so Yeah, I'll open another tab and I can look that up again. I just should have it saved.
Just for example, I receive a notice saying that I have insurance so that I can report it on my taxes.
Mm.
I receive a notice every year saying that I had insurance. So it can be reported. It's a statement that can be sent in with your tax documents.
Okay. So far I have the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Obama in 2010. The IRS and the Department of Labor worked together to establish regulations to enforce the ACA. As part of our example,
So the technical name is the PPACA, is Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, is the full name.
yeah,
of
so
it.
I put the
Okay.
Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, and then I just put in parentheses ACA, kind of to indicate that that's how we refer to it.
Okay, cool.
Of that. So I guess so far that includes, in our example, it does include the statute passing by Congress, signed by President Obama, which includes the regulations from the IRS, Department of Labor. We need to still tie in federal law and case law into those thoughts on how to kind of make that fit in.
And so the case law would include the decision by the court. So let's see here.
There is a fine of so much money depending on the individual if they do not have insurance.
So is that part of the case law?
I believe so, because you have to report when you do your taxes to prove that you have insurance. That's why I receive a notification every year.
So how do you think we should phrase that, Don? I'm just trying to get it down in writing here.
Well, to cite the case, it would be National Federation of Independent Business v. Sibelius. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Is there a way to share text in here?
Look that up to be able to spell that. National Federation of what?
Okay, there we go. There's a way I can chat, so I'll go ahead and just copy that because that'll be easier. There we go. I don't know if you can see that in the chat, but
Yep.
let me see if I can get more details on that.
The National Federation of Independent Businesses versus Sibelius. Okay.
$567 US 519. I don't know what that means, but that's what popped up when I just Googled it really quickly.
Mm.
Okay. So I'm gonna take some of this information, kind of the understanding I've got from Wikipedia here. The Supreme Court ruled in National Federation of Independent Business versus Sibelius 2012 to confirm Congress's power. Okay, let's see. So Wikipedia says it was a landmark United States Supreme Court decision in which the court upheld Congress's power to enact most provisions of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So essentially what it sounds like is that case confirmed that if Affordable Care Act was constitutional.
Right.
So that's where I guess including that as a necessary case law and a real precedent would be maybe a little bit tenuous because it's more reaffirming something that was already stated rather than making a new decision to be followed from then on. But it's still, I guess, suppose.
Reaffirmation can be case law just as much as a precedent.
I like it. Works for me.
Okay, so let me read what I've got. I don't know if we need to specify federal law. We might be able to get kind of slide by referring to Congress, like all three branches of government. We might be able to confirm that that's kind of the organization,
Right.
federal law. But let me read what I have, and you guys tell me if you'd like to hit all four. It said our example is Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, ACA, was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Obama in 2010. The IRS and the Department of Labor worked together to establish regulations to enforce the ACA. The Supreme Court ruled in the National Federation of Independent Business versus Sebelius in 2012, confirmed that the ACA was constitutional and that Congress had power to enact that particular statute.
That sounds great.
That sounds great.
As far as the quiz question goes, referring to that example, then where do we want to go with that, I guess?
Did you have an idea, Dawn? You seem more confident than I felt as far as
well,
Me too.
We create, come up with a name. Give us a name of an individual. Somebody come up with a name. Because I'm
Susan.
Susan. There we go. Susan goes to her employer for proof of insurance, and the employer didn't want to give proof. Or something along that line, so that we can state that what's wrong with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we introduced the Affordable Care Act, and then give a little case example of. Okay.
And we can say what's wrong with this.
Okay, so let me do this. Kind of just as the intro, the brief intro that we're going to include with the quiz question itself. The Affordable Care Act was passed in 2010 and upheld by the Supreme Court in 2012. The IRS and the Department of Labor were tasked with regulating and enforcing the Affordable Care Act. Susan goes to her employer for proof of insurance, and the employer denies her request. What's the question at that point?
Denies her request.
Like her request for the proof of insurance. Is that not
right?
Not fair as well?
It's no longer, that's our statement. And then in the answer, the question is, the question would be, why is this not, trying to think of the wording. Why is this not acceptable? Or,
I mean, is illegal too strong of a word?
no, I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
I think a little bit more background on the ACA.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be helpful.
So if we go, the IRS and Department of Labor were tasked with regulating and enforcing the ACA, including additional taxes for uninsured individuals. Susan goes to employer for proof of insurance for her taxes, and the employer denies her request. Why would this be considered illegal? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to, I don't know, I'm slightly concerned that the question itself isn't addressing the nature of our
Okay.
task, that the definitions of the
Different statutes,
right.
which
So kind of my thought with that, Derek, is to go into that in the questions. So, for example, the IRS and the Department of Labor enact regulations on the employer, require them to provide that information in order to uphold the statute passed by Congress and the case law confirmed by the Supreme Court. So then it kind of gets into that in the answer. Do you think that's still a little too vague to kind of bring that up, or I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts?
If there were multiple questions, if that's what you're like it goes through and you kind of lead them through the story with the questions, I guess, then that makes sense, because then you're, the idea being that you're thinking of the different parts of the law as you're trying to answer these questions. I'm having a hard time. I guess I'm just having a hard time seeing it with one question, though, where that would actually like meet the needs of our assignment.
That's the tough part, is because we had like all of the other.
yeah, that was
Right.
An example that he uses to explain it is attorney-client privilege. There's one situation, one solution or whatever, but
Mhm.
we were asked to kind of bring up examples in our assignment of 4 different
thing.
categories of law, I guess.
Mhm.
So wrapping
Right.
those up into one question can be tough. But
What could be brought up is the lawyer, instead of having a question actually in our statement, in our question or our blurb, saying, is it valid for her to bring a lawsuit. She brings a lawsuit against her employer for lack of proof. And then in the answers, we say due to, the correct answer would be due to the statute of law, regulations have to be enforced to protect the law, or something along those lines.
so, Don, you kind of sparked my thought process a little bit here. With what if we were to phrase this question as what type of law? Like, if they were to the situation being the employer denies her request for that proof of insurance, what type of law would that be neglecting? And then we went through different types, and then eventually, I mean, I think the answer would be in all of the above. But if each answer was statute because, and then we were to explain it a little bit more,
Yeah.
what do you guys think of
Oh,
doing
yeah.
it that way?
I think that would be work.
That would work. Yeah,
Okay.
that would be good.
So let's do this. Everybody do the same one that you answered. Go ahead and type up why that would be neglecting that particular one. So whichever one you had gone over at the beginning, go ahead and type that up and send it in the chat, and I'll just go ahead and copy those answers into the blanks here. And then we'll go from there, because it is having us provide feedback for the answers as well.
So the tentative one that I'm not sure if that phrasing is correct, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
so I had an idea. If we were to make, and so maybe this isn't an option because we shouldn't make it a multiple part question. But if we were to say, then follow up with the question like, why would Susan's employer be unable to appeal her lawsuit? And the answer then being, because of the Supreme Court decision, National Federation of Independent Business v. Sibelius, stating already deciding the case law for this decision. That
So
makes
if we keep the case law in this particular case, but we only needed to have three answers, and then our all of the above, because, and our reasoning behind that is because it.
So give me just 1 second. I'm rewording a couple of things in another part here of our example and our explanation. And then I'll go over kind of what I ended up with here. We'll talk about that. Okay. So what I was just working on is I realized in the template there's a section for our example and there's a section for an explanation of our example. So basically I just broke it down into federal laws in play with all three branches of the federal government influencing this particular case. Statutes are defined as any law passed by a legislative body, and since Congress passed the ACA, it is a statute. The IRS and Department of Labor are regulatory agencies, and rules they designed to enforce this law are the regulations in this example, and case law came into effect when the Supreme Court upheld Congress's power to enact that statute. So that's the explanation I have for our case with that.
good.
As far as the answers, I edited them all a little bit just to make it kind of a similar format. So the question being, why would this be considered illegal? Or I haven't edited that actually. What type of law would this denial neglect? We'll phrase it that way.
Or be in violation of? I don't know if that would work too.
Maybe what type of law would this denial violate?
Maybe.
I have statute because the ACA was written and passed by a legislative body. Federal law because it was passed by the organizations created by the Constitution to make up the federal government. Case law because the Supreme Court upheld the law in 2012. National Federation of Independent Business versus Sibelius 567 U.S. 519, therefore upholding a precedent. And regulation because the Department of Labor was tasked with enforcing ACA requirements on employers to provide insurance and proof thereof. As far as the answers themselves, do those all sound pretty good, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Now there's going to be, it says wrong answer feedback. Let me see if I can find his example really quick. Okay, so his example just has different examples of questions and answers. It doesn't have the feedback section full. So as far as that goes, I suppose we just give it a shot. And if we're wrong, he'll correct us first group assignment. I'm sure he'll be a little flexible with that. So as far as all of the above,
That would be our correct answer.
right.
Yeah.
So for that, I guess for feedback on the correct answer, just all types of
All four aspects.
all four types of law come into play for the ACA. So denying her request would violate all four. Statute 1, we put statute because the ACA was written. And kind of the trick here is figuring out why we, I mean, I feel like the feedback, the easiest way to do it would be like, this is the wrong answer because there are multiple right answers.
Right.
Because technically, it's not wrong that it's violating a statute.
Right.
So how do we give feedback, I guess, on
Feedback is that it's not right because you need to have multiple, and the feedback for all of our wrong answers is going to basically be the same, which is fine because of the nature of our question.
Okay.
The feedback would have to say that it's a wrong answer because it doesn't include all four things.
So let's say it is not correct because it does not reflect all forms of law that are being violated, and then
Right.
use that for all
Yeah.
four
Yes.
of the options then? Okay, let me make sure I have that in all of the spots. Okay. Perfect. So with that being said, let me do this. I'm going to save this file, and what I'm going to do real quick, I'm just going to share it with you guys on our email, so we can all look it over real quick. And then it looks like the only thing we're missing at this point, and as far as that assignment goes, is going to be that link for the recording.
Yeah, and I'll probably have to upload it to YouTube in order to make a clickable link to it
Gotcha.
to make.
And that should be okay.
All right.
Okay, so here's in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and paste that the link. You should hopefully be able to just click on that to access the document. And then let's just have everyone go ahead and read through it, double check, edit, whatever you'd like, and let me know if that's all good. While you guys are reading through that, I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick, right?
that.
I like it.
I think my only concern is rooted in my deep hatred for multiple choice questions. Um, and and I feel like I'm being misleading by crafting the question in this way, but it is a good question.
Right.
It does flush out all the examples of these different types of laws, so that's all good. I'm thinking of being on the test, taking that question, and then deliberating for at least 12 minutes over which one I should choose because they're all a little bit right, but maybe some are more right than others, you know. And yeah, so that's my. But I think it's a good question. I think this is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, how'd the read through go, guys?
it went good.
Good.
Hey,
Yeah.
so that's pretty much our time. I know we spent the first 10 or 15 minutes waiting.
Okay,
Had a pretty good meeting.
for next time, we do need to, I looked ahead. We are going to have to do a kind of a 10-minute presentation on a case. So kind
This
of
is part of our meeting, or we're gonna have to do that?
as part of our meeting, we have to do a presentation on a case. So we'll have to record that as well as the group meeting for the group work. So we'll have two different people record. We'll have one person record the whole meeting and then one person record when we decide what we're doing for our presentation.
So part of our meeting is gonna be kind of creating this presentation. Then we don't have
It's
to.
going to be creating a 10-minute presentation for the class on a specific case. We're supposed to determine what our thoughts are on the case personally, but as far as the group, we're supposed to present what actually occurred in the case.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
So with that being said, where we're at right now, then, Derek, we need you to get the link.
Yes.
You can email that, or you can just paste it into that OneDrive document.
Okay.
But just shoot us an email when you get that done, and I'll submit that document. Don, you were going to submit that we were meeting.
I will submit the time,
Okay.
date and time,
Think
and
that
I'll
was
do
it,
that when
right?
I get off from now. I'll just immediately go in and do that.
Okay. Do we have anything else we were supposed to be going over? Anything?
I think that's it for our first meeting.
All right. Good job,
Yeah, I
team,
think we
then.
covered everything.
See
Okay.
you guys next week.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Good morning.